For this demonstration of the We Are Memory Keepers template studio, I'm going to be making a box with the box guide. So these are all kind of squarish of different heights. So you can either do a perfect square or kind of a shorter square. And I'm going to do, I think the fourth from the bottom. I'm going to do a 7 by 7 by 2.8 inch box. For that, I'll need a 16 by 16 piece of paper, and then I have the alignment guides here on the measurements. And I mentioned this in all the videos. The instructions on the box, it only shows one set of instructions, but we receive two, and we don't know if that's intentional or not, but it's great having two because you can keep one set of instructions on the measurements, and then the other set you can go through the actual step by step. So I'm just going to set this over to the side, and this one over here. And first I need to cut this down to 16 by 16. So this is some of the We Are Memory Keepers designer poster board, and this is kind of the black glitter. Does it have an official name? I was right, black glitter. But it's got a very nice subtle sheen to it. It's not that easy to see on the video, but it looks great here. And I think as a gift box, this will look very satiny and kind of nice with a very impressive ribbon or bow on it to kind of just pop against the black. It's kind of spacey too, so if you're going for kind of a sci-fi space theme, you could go with that. Okay, so I need to cut this down to 16 by 16. So I'm just making sure everything's lined up. And then I'm using the straight cutting edges. And right now, I've already got the A and the B together, which is used for vertical cuts. And when you're doing the vertical cuts, you want to make sure the arrows on the guides are to the right, and then you put those into your measurement. So I want to cut this at 16. Just making sure everything's lining up. And for the cutting, the guide can wiggle a little bit, so cutting from the top helps. And plus you can use your hand just to kind of brace things as you go to make sure it cuts. Before I take that away, this one cut really cleanly. Now for the horizontal cut, I switch to the A and the B, or the A and the C, sorry. So this is the B. Switching over. Oh. No, you don't use the A. It's the B and the C, because there was no place to put the plugs. And when you're cutting horizontally, you want to make sure the arrows are at the top, and this needs to be at 16 inches also. So I'm putting this in at 16. And then slicing. Oops, and I just shifted everything. And I did mention in our unboxing, the one thing that's nice with the smaller boards is you have a nice edge to push on. So you can always push to the top to know that you're going to make a clean cut. Here you have to be very careful because you're just working with the mat and you just don't want things to slide around. It's not a huge issue, it's just something you need to keep in mind. So now that's at 16 by 16. So for the next step, I'm going to use the envelope and box guide. So this is the same tool I used for the envelopes, and the C guide. And right at the top, it's got the letter in the plastic. So with those together, I hop on to step 5. And you align the top Oops, and I had this backwards. You align the top at 7.5, or sorry, 4.5. And down here, the arrow goes into 17.5. And step 6, you align the lower left corner of the paper to the alignment A measurement. So coming over to our measurements, for the box we're making, the alignment A is at 6 inches. So we line this up at 6 inches. And just like the envelope, I'm making sure that it's against the edge of the heavier teal line across the bottom and on the edge. So I've got a good edge to it. And now for step 7, we cut inside the curve and then score on the upper edge of the diagonal. I didn't quite cut that edge as good as I could. No, it just pops right out. And that's why it's important to make sure you're inside that heavier line, because the notch tool just comes right under that. So that way I got the clean cut off the edge. And now I need to score along the top diagonal. And because of the quality of this designer poster board, I find you do have to be a little bit forceful with your scoring, just because with the cheaper poster board, you really didn't have to because it was so much thinner. But with this nice quality We Are Memory Keepers designer poster board and the glitter, it's a much heavier paper to work with. So now we rotate this 90 degrees and bring it back to that 6-inch alignment A. So just confirming, and it's important to make sure you keep all your measurements straight. So 6 inches, 6 inches, and then repeat. So again, 6 inches, lining up inside. And one nice thing with scoring with the envelope and box guide is because this is braced a little bit more, I find it doesn't flex as much. So you don't have to be as careful as you do when you're doing the straight cuts. Now, step 9, we flip the paper over and align the lower left corner with alignment A again. So alignment A on my table is 6 inches. And repeat the scoring, or the cutting, the scoring, and the rotating. So rotating it 90 degrees, lining it up to 6 inches, and square. So now I've repeated that for all 4 sides, and it says move the paper to align the score line with the score guide on the envelope and box guide. So I've got this score line. I'm just making sure I'm lined up on the bottom here, so I have a straight edge inside the darker teal line, and then just working that over a little bit until I line up with the score guide here on the envelope and box guide. It's a little hard to see on the video, but there's a nice white line on the teal clear plastic to help you line things up, and that's lined up with the score line on the box. And one thing that helps a little bit is that's lining up diagonally now across this flap here. So now I just score that. And then step 13. Oh, step 13 was to line up with the score guide. Or step 12 was to line up with the score guide. Step 13 was to do the actual scoring, and then rotate and repeat that on all 4 sides. So just lining it up flat on the bottom, while also lining it up to the score guide there. Just making sure I've got a good match, and then scoring. So it's lined up with my score line. My last rotation. Give that a good score. So I've done all 4 sides. Yep. And now I rotate 45 degrees to align the corner with the notch guide. So for that, there's a little notch here, and you make sure that that's on kind of, the paper's just notched in to that V. And then you cut the notch to close the box. And again, like the bag, this is kind of a little different in that you can't really go all the way around, but it's just enough to create that notch in the top. So now there's a little notch there, and we rotate it 180 degrees and line that up again and cut the other notch. And now step 16 is to rotate this so the notch is in the corner, the left-hand corner. And we take the A and B guides So we're going to take the edge of the paper to the 11 inches, and then the A and B guide we put at the alignment B measurement, which is 3. So I read that backwards, so it's really important to pay attention. So what we're going to do is we put the A and B guides at 11 inches. And then we take this and we line the edge up at the B alignment measurement, which is 3. Making sure we're got a straight edge. And this is going to put a score across the box. And we score it from the center to the bottom. And you rotate 90 degrees, and do it again. And what this is doing is there's a little edge that kind of corner of the box that puckers in when you're folding it up. And you're only doing that on that little flap. You're not going into the base of the box. So now we're done, and you're going to kind of pinch and crease the diagonal score lines inward as the box is assembled, and glue the inside flaps to the panels with the cut notches. So these are the cut notches. And of all the projects so far, the envelope and the bag, this is the one that feels the most like you're doing kind of a magic origami where things can be a little odd. So I just like to make sure all the score lines are nice and flexed, because I found I didn't do that before, and when I was trying to get at those later stages of the box, it was a little awkward trying to make sure everything was flexing appropriately. So what you're going to do is bring up the edges, and those little notches fold in on themselves. So you can see here they're flat, and they just fold into the box, and they want you to adhere them to the edges that have the notched sides. So what I'm going to do is a little prep work, and just put some adhesive down on this already. So I know the edge that's going to go against where the notch is. So I'm just doing that little V shaped on that smaller flap. And this is from experience doing our first box, which we did to make sure we had a little bit of a better idea of what we were doing. So this one could be scored a little bit better. Just gotta be careful with my tape. So I bring that in, and I'm just kind of standing it up so I can give that tape a good press to bond. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, just standing it up a little bit and letting the flap go into place and giving it a good press to make sure that those have a good bond. And now you close up the other flaps, and then you take your notch and bring it together. This has a little bit of adhesive. So there you go. Could have scored this top edge a little bit better on this one. But there you go.